Okay, I will give a very brief, kind of truncated version of our history at UDOT of CMGC. We've been doing CMGC since about 2006. So around 14 years now, and we've done about 55 projects for, using the CMGC method. Starting off, when we started off way back in 2006, we were strictly qualification-based selection. We were decentralized. Each one of our regions would analyze a project and decide if they wanted to try and do it at CMGC when we first started, and then was administering it in a decentralized manner, project region specific. We did it strictly on qualifications. There was no price component. We partnered with our local FHWA and worked through an SCP-14 process to where we standardized it. And once we believed that it was after we did a couple, 3 projects, and we believed that it was going to be a viable tool in our toolbox, we formalized the SCP and got approval to do it. At that point, we decided that it would be best to be a centralized selection process. Our central headquarters oversaw that. We had oversight of it. We centralized it, and we did it in conjunction with our consultant services group. So since we were procuring contractors to do work that was more similar to what consultants would be doing than it would be what contractors are doing, we ran it through that service. Back then, we again were qualifications based, but the issue we had is we went very prescriptive. We started talking about if we get specific team members that we needed to have. We would talk about very specific details for approach. And what we found in doing that is a lot of our proposals, it was kind of almost a checkbox. They'd say, yeah, we're going to do that. Yeah, we're going to do that. We didn't see a lot of differentiation in it. We also included a pricing component. I want to talk about that for just a second. Pricing component back then was somewhere between 5 and 20% of the total selection score. And it varied on projects anywhere from we were 5% designed to 90% designed, and ranged from 3 to 5 bid items. Typically, we went one time as high as 193 bid items we had them put prices in on. And the price back then, at that point, was required to be held through pre-construction and then continue on during the construction phase. Problem we had with that, though, is, as anybody who's worked with contractors knows, it's difficult to hold a price for a year. They can't secure subcontractors to do that. They can't get suppliers to guarantee a price for them for a year. And we ended up finding it was eventually a serious point of conflict for the projects. So we evolved again and changed the format. We eliminated the pricing component and then moved on to the next phase. What we did when we were doing evaluations for proposals is we would originally sign out all the proposals to everyone on the selection committee a week or so in advance, let them read through all the proposals, then we'd meet together and talk in a group. We found that people were kind of one of two minds. They would either read them the day they got them and then forget a lot of what they'd read over the course of a week or 2 weeks, or they were reading them when we showed up for the meeting. So what we did, and to make it more fair and equitable for the contractors, is we all met together and we would then go contractor by contractor and go by section through each contractor. We'd read it, have a discussion about it, look for strengths and weaknesses that we would write down and missed opportunities, and then move on to the next section of the same contractor. And when we finish that one, we'd move on to the next contractor. So we changed that process. Like I said before, we removed pricing from the RFP. It evolved into a sample estimate. And the sample estimate, its whole purpose then was to provide us, the contractors, an opportunity to tell us exactly how transparent they were going to be. We made the sample estimate section kind of unlimited. If they wanted to give us 50 pages of what their typical HCSS output looked like, then great. But we required them to put a descriptor that talked about, since a lot of the people who were reviewing this weren't familiar necessarily with HCSS or other estimating programs, that they would describe what they looked like and what they were giving us, and show us how transparent they're going to be. Were they talking about methods? Were they talking about means? Were they talking about production rates and crews and equipment and all the things that make up a bid? And how open were they going to be with us during the pre-construction phase and going through our estimating all the way up to construction? We needed to know how open they were going to be. We also became less prescriptive. We increased, what we found out is that increased differentiation. We wouldn't tell them, tell us about this team member. We would say, what team members do you want to provide us, and what value would that give us? It allowed the contractors to be able to respond appropriately. And the contractors in the end liked it. They felt like that was, they were freed up. They were able to tell us what they could do and present their best face. We also did a qualitative assessment guide. Now what that is we did scoring, and one of the problems we had with our original scoring was we found that people looked at this as if it was back in high school, and that everybody that turned the proposal deserved at least a C, right? They did some work, they put it in. We can't score them below 75. So we built a qualitative assessment guide and told people to read through this guide, and as they're scoring, and pick a category with reading the description, which category you felt that section fell in, and then allow them to score inside that section using Decision Lens. Now, we use Decision Lens. I don't know if anybody on the call is familiar with Decision Lens, but it's a Department of Defense program that allows behind-the-scene analytics that the selection committee can put their scores in, and we can do analytics as it's going, and before we make final selection, that monitors and looks for anything like bias and how well they align, how well the scorers are aligned. You know, we can have discussions then about score alignment. Right now, our typical RFP is broken down into 4 sections. We ask them to tell us about their project team and proposed personnel. We give, depending on the project specifics, that can range anywhere typically from 30 to 50%. Pre-construction approach, how they're going to help us during pre-construction, what their involvement is going to be, what innovations they have, and we score that at about 20 to 30% of the total score. Construction approach, any innovative ideas for construction, and how they plan on solving individual problems. And then the sample estimate, we always keep it 5%. That's because it's important. We want them to be transparent, but we didn't want that to be the overriding factor in selection of a contractor. Honestly, that is my 9-minute version of this. That's pretty much what I have. That's my contact information for this first section. And that's it. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Matt. Hey, on the assessment, the guidelines, you know, I think that's awesome that you have some standards and criteria that you do to help with the grading. But what kind of kickback did you get from people? And it sounded like you just encouraged them to read over these guidelines. Do you have any like training on it too? Just curious.
Absolutely. Before each one of these start, we set up a training meeting and remind them. A lot of our folks now have been through multiple of these. So we'll set up a training that talks about this and describes all of it. And to answer your first question, yeah, we did have quite a bit of kickback from the contractors at first. Everyone was expecting, you know, it's hard for them to get a score of like 55.
Yeah.
When or even a score of 70. Right. They're exceeding their stated requirements, and go back to their home offices and say, it was a great proposal. Well, it was a great proposal. Yeah. But we're trying to use a whole range of scores to be able to do that, to be able to describe that. that are getting better the longer they've been involved with it and the more they understand it. So we aren't getting those comments as much anymore, but at first, yeah, we did.